I'm joined right now by somebody who covers the Lakers and the NBA for the LA Times. Previously covered the Clippers for the Orange County Register. Good friend of the program. Joins us right at the start of the play-in tournament, and he joins us via Zoom. He is Dan Woike. Dan, what's going on? How are you?
Jim, I'm great. I haven't taunted any crying children yet today, but, it's early. There's still time.
All right, so Dan, the Lakers have gone from a team that opened up the year 2-10 to being 18-9 since the trade deadline. That gives them the second best record in the West since February 9th. They seem to feel pretty damn good about themselves right now. Do they have reason to, and how do they look to you?
Yeah, I think they've got pretty good reason to, Jim. I mean, I think it's not even just, the stretch like, from the 2-10 start. You mentioned the trade deadline. I was talking to D'Angelo Russell about this the other night. The first night that those guys showed up in LA, the night of the trade deadline, the Lakers lost to the Bucks. They only had like 8 guys healthy playing, and they were 6 games under 500, Jim, that day. And since then they have become a winning basketball team, really for the first time in over a season and a half. It's been a real uphill slog for LeBron James and for Anthony Davis. Injuries, bad on-court fits, bad off-court fits. And really, the locker room is in a good space. The team is playing pretty good basketball. They've scuffled a little bit here down the stretch. I'm not quite sure if it's they're running out of gas. I don't know if they kind of need the postseason to energize them a little bit. But they played some of their best basketball this year, this past month. They peaked at the right time. And in a Western Conference that's kind of confusing to sort out, they're in as good a spot as anybody. They'd much rather be the 6th seed, obviously, than have to play in this play-in tournament. But even that is broken pretty favorably for them.
Dan, I think you're right. I think that they've played well, certainly since the trade deadline, but they have scuffled of late. And I think they're just kind of waiting, right, to throw the switch like, all right, it's go time right now, let's do it. I wonder what's going to happen when they go to throw the switch if the light goes on. But starting with tonight, you look at the T-Wolves. I mean, Dan, some really dumb stuff, right? Jaden McDaniels goes and gives the wall the hands and fractures one of them. Rudy Gobert is going to serve his 1-game suspension for swinging on teammate Kyle Anderson. I mean, ask me some of the dumbest stuff ever. Are you looking for the Lakers to pound Minnesota tonight, or can you make an argument that the T-Wolves might hang in?
I mean, I think Minnesota will absolutely hang in, right? Speaking of combat sports, Jim, who knew that the Minnesota Timberwolves would be a hub for it too? But I think the Jaden McDaniels injury is a very big deal. Obviously, Rudy Gobert has been a guy who's been kind of maligned in the playoffs in the past. A guy who's been played off the court in important games. The Lakers did it a couple years ago with Stanley Johnson. Teams can go very small against Rudy Gobert and put him into tough situations. Minnesota has Karl Anthony Towns, right, to play center. It's a pretty good second option. So they're good on that front. The McDaniels injury, though, is like that's the guy that they were going to throw at LeBron James. That would be the guy that if D'Angelo Russell got hot, he would guard him. He would maybe even guard Anthony Davis for stretches. Not having that versatility on defense is going to be a big deal for Minnesota. But look, Anthony Edwards, to me, Jim, is a dog. Like, that guy is a star. He carried Minnesota in the second half against New Orleans to get them into this position. The Lakers think this is going to be an easy game. I think they're mistaken. This will be a tough, yes, the Timberwolves are shorthanded. Yes, the Lakers are favored. Yes, the Lakers are at home. Minnesota's a tough, physical, hungry team. They've been in this position before. They won a play-in game last year. I would anticipate this to be a pretty good basketball game and pretty intense.
Dan Woike joining us along with his dog B. Arthur. I love Anthony Edwards. I think you're right. I don't see them winning. I don't see the T-Wolves winning, but I don't see them rolling over either. Dan, so looking around the West, what about Sacramento? They snapped the longest playoff drought in NBA history, and they're going to go up against the defending champion Warriors, which I think is actually pretty sweet. I love the matchup. Golden State, as we know, has had a terrible time on the road this year, but they should have Andrew Wiggins back. They are the defending champs. Who do you like in this matchup?
I mean, I like the Warriors, but I think it'll be tougher than people expect. I was talking to a coach the other day, and he had said sort of, all these teams that were jockeying to play Sacramento, that there's a little bit maybe buyer beware in that. You look around the West, the Warriors are reintegrating Andrew Wiggins. The Suns have had injuries, and they put things together. Denver scuffled down the finish a little bit. Memphis has had tons of drama and has big injuries. Like, the Kings have just kind of gone about their business, which is crazy because typically Kings business means like being done sometimes around March 1st. But this has been a team that has been drama free. It knows exactly who it is. They've been healthy. They've played the injuries that they've played through, and they score a ton of points. Now, can they get stops? They haven't yet, and that tends to be pretty important in the postseason. But they are a team that has now a real identity, Jim. And I think Sacramento's going to be rocking. Like those crowds up there, especially when the games are big, are great. I saw it's $200 more expensive to get into a Kings playoff game in the first round than it is to get in to see the Warriors. It's going to be wild. One of the series, if not the series, I think I'm most excited kind of to watch, Kings Warriors. It should be really fun.
Dan Woike joining us. What is another series that you're really excited to watch?
Well, I mean, I think Clippers Suns is going to be fascinating in the West, right? You've got Phoenix. The Clippers won to not try to duck them, which I appreciate. I think sports in which teams are losing on purpose, generally we need less of that. I want to see teams kind of go and challenge themselves, and the challenge doesn't get any bigger than Phoenix, right? My favorite stat maybe of the entire NBA season, I think, is that Kevin Durant has lost 2 games that he's played in since Thanksgiving or something like that. It's a crazy stat. Like, he just doesn't lose basketball games. But Kawhi Leonard kind of quietly this year sort of returned to form. And in the playoffs, when you've got this guy who you can unleash on defense, who seemingly makes like every 19-footer, can get to his spots because of his physicality, he's good enough to win you a couple games. And then around him, the Clippers have a ton of shooters, a ton of guys. And then they have like probably the ultimate wild card, Russell Westbrook, which is like, who knows, like super high variance player, could win you a game, could lose you a game just as easily. But I kind of like the Clippers. Obviously, I wish Paul George was healthy in this series. I think that would make it a much more compelling matchup. I think Phoenix will win. But it's another series that I think will be really tough. And then, you look out east, I think Cleveland, New York is, the most compelling first-round series. Contrast in styles, I think Cleveland has been a really good story this year. The Knicks have played, I mean, you talk about identity. I mean, that is just like 5 guys who play like Tom Thibodeau talks, like raspy and rough and stuff like that. And they have that identity. And that could be like some good old school, like Jeff Van Gundy grab you by the calves, Eastern Conference basketball.
I agree with you. I think that the Suns-Clippers, Dan, to me, that's the best first-round matchup, but the Cavaliers and Knicks are not far behind. I love both those matchups. Before I let you go, because you mentioned drama, let's talk drama. Let's talk about a team that's not there. Let's talk about the Mavericks. There's something else, right? They complete their meltdown. They finish 6 games under 500. They tank so blatantly Friday in order to keep that draft pick that it prompts an NBA investigation. What do you make of all the drama in Dallas?
I don't know if you saw Mr. B's ears perk up when you mentioned Dallas. He's disgusted by the effort on the stretch. I think
he looks enraged. He looks enraged.
He's just viciously mad. I think, look, Jim, they had a reason to lose, right? They had that draft pick, top 10 protected. It is what it is. They're not the only team that tanked down the stretch. I will say they're the only team that tanked down the stretch that, if you looked at their roster, can pretty easily say that they would have 2 of the 3 best players on the court in any game that they played. That they've got more talent at the top of their roster than the Thunder, than the Pelicans, even the Lakers at times, right? Kyrie Irving just won a game in LA without Luka Doncic a month ago. And I think, for them to kind of walk away from a competitive chance, it confused people. I think it upset Luka Doncic. I think, I know there were people within that organization who didn't want to do that. That being said, they're on the clock with this guy. Luka is kind of, confirmed that he's not going to request a trade. He's happy in Dallas and stuff like that. But being around LeBron James these last few years as they've struggled, being around Anthony Davis these last few years they struggled. Special talent doesn't like to lose. You want to be in the biggest stage. You want to play in the biggest game with the brightest lights. That doesn't happen when you're sitting at home in May. And I think Dallas is going to have to figure out who the right guy is to play alongside Luka Doncic to take some of the pressure off of him. And they've got to figure out what to do without gutting the rest of their roster. They did that. Jalen Brunson was obviously a massive mistake for them. The Kyrie Irving trade, we'll see. I still think that Kyrie is a guy who can play with anybody, Jim, but it's a mess, and they've got a generational talent, Luka Doncic there, and you need to maximize that because they don't come around that often.
So really quickly, if Kyrie is a guy, Dan, that can play with anybody, he and Luka did not play well together this year. I understand it was a late season addition. Now, if they didn't do it this year, is there any reason to believe it's going to work any better next year if Kyrie does re-up? Would it be different?
The challenge would be is you've got to you've got to find kind of the types of players that you gave away to get Kyrie Irving, right? Like you traded Dorian Finney-Smith, who's kind of that prototypical 3-and-D player. You would need rim protection and you need defensive wings. And here's the thing with that, Jim. Like everybody wants those things, right? And you're going to be on a budget, and that's going to be difficult. But if you're going to play kind of two, subpar defensive players on the outside, and look, and they need to get more of a care factor for Luka Doncic on defense. I think there's no question on that front. Like he has got to play harder. He's got to be in better shape at the start of a season. And if you're going to tell him that he's going to do less on offense, we're going to help lighten your load there. We're going to need more from you on defense. And I think, he's running out of time too. I mentioned how the Mavs are on the clock. I think he's on the clock a little bit in that way too, to try to be a player who can impact the game on defense. But that you've got to try to really build the roster around those guys and find better defenders, better shooters. But like I said, that's at the top of everyone's shopping list. It's hard. I think the only issue though, Jim, is if you let Kyrie walk, or if he chooses to walk, then what? Who's next? You're just doing. You're running it. It's like
then what? Indeed.
It's like when you change offensive coordinators with a young quarterback, like every year. It's like you need a little bit of stability.
He covers the Lakers and the NBA for the LA Lakers. Used to cover the Clippers for the Orange County Register. Good friend of the program. With his wingman, B. Arthur, he is Dan Woike. Dan, appreciate it so much, man. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Tried not to clear my throat this time, too. I want to make sure that I was nice and well lubricated.
You were, dude. You sounded great. All right, Dan Woike, good job. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell to be the first to know when we do upload a new video.